Hello and welcome. I'm Srinivasan and this is Talking Sense with Srini. In this edition, we're discussing what could be one of India's biggest reforms since the 1990s. Within the span of just a few days, India has managed to sign a comprehensive free trade agreement with the European Union and finalize a framework for an interim deal with the United States. Two massive economies, two very different deals, and one dramatic shift in India's economic trajectory. And joining us to unpack all of this is our editor in chief, Srinivasan. So let me begin with you. Why do you think that the India-US interim deal and the India-EU trade deals, why do you think that both of the deals are the biggest reform that India has ever had since 1991?
Well, to understand this, why this is being described as a major transformative deal, before we come to that, let's briefly look at what happened in 1991. 1991 offered us a whole lot of choices. There were essentially two or three reforms which were done. There was a trade reform, there was industrial reform, things like MRTP, which actually called Monopoly and Restrictive Trade Practices Act, which put limits on the industries producing various goods. That was abolished. Forex was liberalized, among many things. So what it gave is a lot of changes. We got a huge boost to the service sector. For the first time, there's something called service sector took shape. When Narayana Murthy's and others started their own company, there was a startup culture which got a boost. Why I said choice, there were only two types of cars available, Fiat or Ambassador. But in the 1980s, with the arrival of Maruti car, that changed. But then it was a low-cost car. The other low-cost car came in 2008, which was much later after the economic reforms. That's Nano. But before that, before the reforms, there was only one car, there was only, largely Maruti which was there. The choice wasn't there. But with the economic reforms of 1991, whole lot of things changed. Earlier, the motorcycles are only two. It was actually Rajdoot or ESG or Vespa or Lambretta scooters.
That's right.
All these things changed dramatically. People had choice. And there's something which came up, something called middle class.
Yeah.
People have begun to talk about the middle class and after 1991. Clothing. People were crazy about what was then called as Wrangler jeans. And anybody who go abroad would be expected to bring a pair of jeans for the relative. Chocolates. And people really, look forward for anyone bringing foreign chocolates. Ladies innerwear, you'll be surprised. There's a senior journalist who actually wrote a complete column on that whenever he'd go abroad, he will have a request from ladies to bring him, innerwear. Then there was no concept of premium brands as such. All these things came up. By 1990, in the Fortune, the list
500.
Even the 500, we figured nowhere. And in 1996, three businessmen figured Ambani's.
You mean the billionaires index?
Billionaires index. Before that, there was none.
Yeah.
So who were the three Ambani's? Kumaramangalam Birla and Lakshmi Nivas Mittal. Before that, there was none. So that happened in 1996. In 5 years, you could even see billionaires growing up. Like I said, a whole lot of these things happened. Stock market. You see, the stock market, which is only trading around 2,000, 3,000, have gone up to now it is really up, but then it went up to 50,000. You saw the dramatic changes after 2014, but the stock market was only at the level of 2,000, 3,000 Sensex. The other thing which has happened is very, very significant is poverty reduction. So the number of poor, 60% of population or 500 million in 1991 were below poverty line. By 2020, there is an estimation that it reduced to 200 million, at about 20% of population. There's another estimate which says that, as opposed to 500 million, there were only 50 million who were there by 2015, 16. All these things happened. The major reduction in poverty, opening up of industry, rise of middle class, choice for the consumers. All these things happened following those reforms. So in that sense, that reform was really breathtaking, big, with wide sweep. Now let's rewind back to the present. Why they are saying transformative? Because, and what I also feel that this is significant, because with these two trade deals with US and Europe, India is once again being opened up. It's opened up. Its markets are being opened up now. That's what you're hearing now. We may get milk products from US. We may get even wine and other things which may start. You're going to get some motorcycles like Harley Davidson. Of course, there will be limits on them. You may even get European cars. It's not that from tomorrow Mercedes, Audis, and Benz are going to crowd the streets.
Fly on the roads, yeah.
But there will be certain limits. There'll be quota based. The first year, so many.
That's right.
Second year, they will do all that. So, but then the fact that more choice will be available for a
consumers
consumer.
in India.
That's for the consumer. As far as the industry is concerned, they're going to face major challenge. So what was happening is the industry opened up. They started performing. So two things still lacked, quality and lack of export. So what we couldn't do so far is to add, export as an engine to this economy, which was happening more on the IT sector. Our
That's
IT
right.
sector really is performed, but not on manufacturing. And the other sector is agriculture. Agriculture products, we have to separate the two. One is, the cash crops and the staple crops. So again, that market has also opened up. So in that sense, if handled well, this could once again be pretty, transformative.
Okay, so I also want to ask you on this. The 1991 liberalization move happened on the backdrop of plummeting forex and all that. India was not in a great situation then, but now looking at the macroeconomic fundamentals, we seem to be at the sweet spot. Inflation is low. Growth is so high. It's fastest growing major economy in the world. What prompted for these reforms? Is the question.
Well, that according to estimate of a government official himself, about, because of these tariffs, which was hiked to 50%, 2.2 million jobs were lost, largely in Noida, Tirupur and Surat. So that's what happened.
MSMEs.
A whole lot of, basically in various sectors. Yeah, largely MSMEs. But the fact here is, if 1991 crisis was staring in the face, India largely goes for reforms when it is facing a crisis.
That's right.
That's very evident. Otherwise, even though it's supposed to be a right of center government as far as polity is concerned, largely social polity, but when it comes to economic policies, largely it is also socialist in nature. That's a kind of thing. Even this government initially, but then now, suddenly they had to do labor reforms. They codified this.
That's right, yeah.
After pressure from Trump, many of these changes which are being thought for a long time started happening. See, the first phase of reforms are always easy. It's only when after 20, 30 years you try for a second or a third phase of reforms, things get really difficult. That wasn't happening. So what India required was one another major economic reforms, a push. And I think it's not that India wanted. We were in a situation where the government found itself between rock and a hard place, and it had to take a decision. And the Indian market has been literally forced open by Trump. Okay. That's the thing.
Let's talk a little bit about both the deals. Firstly, Europe, because Europe is what we achieved first. And the European Union deal was also seen as the mother of all deals, and then came the United States, daddy of all deals, if you want to call it. But the tariff was about 50%, and then the deal said that they're going to drop it by 18%. So but this 50% came in because Trump wanted to slap India. 25% for buying Russian oil, and for pushing powering the Ukraine war, and so on. So, but what does India stand to gain out of this? Because it's already 50%. You brought it to 18%. So what's the math doesn't actually.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. So what seems to happen is 2-3 things, which is very interesting. One is Trump has completely, WTO, which is a rule-based trade.
Yeah.
Which uh, came up after GATT. GATT was established much earlier. After years of negotiations, all countries got together and agreed upon that we should do trade among each other on certain rules. And they also gave concession to less developed countries. So these criteria was that developed countries, developing countries, underdeveloped countries, concessions were given. So it was more a multilateral forum. And then there was also various rules decided. Somebody dumps, what should be done. If somebody doesn't behave, what should be the punishment. All these things were done. So the global trade become a big factor. That's what globalization happened. But that's the earlier reforms, which you saw. What Trump did was he upended the whole thing. He threw everything aside and he refused to believe in the WTO order. He just said that this whole thing of, equality or reciprocity, he turned on its head the meaning of reciprocity. Reciprocity didn't mean, you see disparities and balance it out. It's like two brothers, one is rich, one is poor, and then the father or mother parents would try certain, to bridge that, disparity between them. But for Trump, he's a rich boy, but he would like poor also to pay. I mean, that's a kind of a, argument he gave. And being a former, real estate baron and a real estate, where he must have done a lot of negotiations, he did similar things here. If India was, he slapped earlier, if you go, you have to, if you were to wind back, the peak tariff wasn't between India and between India and US wasn't more than 10 to 15%. Actually, most of the tariff range between 2 to 3%. So he raised it dramatically to 25%.
That's right, yeah.
Slapped another 25% as a punishment for trading, buying Russian oil. And then he dramatically said, now I'm reducing from 50% to 18%. So that looks very, lucrative. But it isn't. It's actually the tariff has gone up. But then why is India still happy? Because it is not as if he has only imposed these tariffs on India. He has done it on various blocks in the country, whether it's a European bloc, whether it is, Latin America, whether it is, the Middle East, everywhere he has done that. And then, so what has happened is now we are looking at which are the countries with which we are competing and whether we are at an advantageous situation. That's what the Indian government is saying. Look at Bangladesh, look at Pakistan, look at Vietnam, look at other Indonesia, other countries probably with whom we have a competition in exports, especially Vietnam and Bangladesh. We are better off. We have an advantage of 1 or 2% because they are at 19 or 18 and we are 20 or 19 and we are at 18. That's why you're feeling. Otherwise, it's completely a different, kind of a trade order now, if you don't want to call it world order. Yeah.
Okay, but both deals have agricultural provisions, both the Europe and the US deal, and and the US deal is particularly where the fiercest opposition is coming in, because the Congress party calls the government as, in a way surrendered before Trump and so on. You think Indian government during its negotiations has left the Indian farmers high and dry, particularly even after Prime Minister Modi has promised the farmers politically that, that I won't let you down?
Look, one thing is very clear to Prime Minister Modi and this government that if the interests of farmers are not safeguarded, then politically it will be unsustainable.
Yeah.
I think this has been conveyed by him in so many words to Donald Trump also, because that's because Donald Trump was very keen to open Indian agriculture market, and that's been his bugbear, and he's been constantly saying. But then India has been resisting for a long while because this is a really political hot potato for anybody to handle. If you know that even the farmers' agitation had forced the government to withdraw the bills in 2022, I think. So it's not easy for this government to accept anything which will be against farmers. So what they're trying to say is, by opening up agriculture sector, wheat, rice, or other staple products will have zero concessions. Whatever are sensitive agriculture products, the old tariff will stay. Similarly, on dairy, it doesn't include milk in any form, but milk products and other things, some of the duties will continue to be what it was earlier. So that change won't happen. So this is what some of the ministry officials are saying. But then we have to see actually some of these turning into fine print and then being codified by the Commerce Ministry. So that one has to wait and watch. So basically, what is happening currently is a build-up of a kind of a perception.
But how
game.
long do you think it'll take for these to come into a solid sort of agreement, where the goods come into India and then the goods from India go into United States?
Well, so it's happening in three phases. The first one is basically, a statement of political intent, which is what he put. Donald Trump put it on his Truth Social,
platform,
and he announced that he has a deal with Prime Minister Modi, and PM Modi also reciprocated on the X. That was the first step. So once the political intent was cleared, it was followed up by a framework interim agreement, as they call it. So that we saw a common press release being issued by the White House. So that's the second step. The third is, I think, an agreement will be signed between India and US somewhere in March, and that will be the bilateral agreement, and that will be the final binding agreement legally between the two countries. Based on that, the various sector products will be codified, and that's where you would know. So I think somewhere in March, most things will be more clear than what it is now.
Okay, and there are a couple of sectors, which are expected to benefit a lot: pharma, gems and jewelry, and obviously textiles. So you think these are going to be the winners?
Yeah, so we have advantage in some of these areas. For instance, pharma. So even at this situation, we'll be exporting to them at zero. Like you said, gems and jewelry, we have a certain advantage. See, again in textiles, we are now saying that we have a certain advantage as compared to Bangladesh, who's our immediate, or Vietnam, because we have a certain tariff advantage, 1 or 2% over them. But the thing is, there are two issues here. Quality, whether we're able to make that quality with this cost. Second is about the labor cost. Still Bangladesh and, especially Bangladesh, is able to offer much lower payment to its laborers. So also Vietnam. So these are the advantages, and whether we are able to overcome this advantage and still provide a quality product, that is a challenge which the industry, specifically textile and other industries, will have to face to keep the competitive edge. But yes, in these sectors, we have a certain advantage.
You talked about the competitive edge, and you also heard your interview with Dr. Biswajit Dar, where he said Indian agri markets are absolutely incompetitive, he said. So, what kind of sectors you think need to up their competitive spirit here?
Yeah, so I think two sectors very clear: agriculture and manufacturing. Both of them have to. But
agri is also not fully open, isn't it?
No, not yet. But then whichever areas are open. So there are 2 points of view here. If you had to listen to, Dr. Gulati, Ashok Gulati, he says, India is very competitive. Indian agriculture is very competitive. It can face the competition very easily. But then if you were to hear, like you said, Biswajit, he says, no, they are not at all competitive. They'll face a lot of difficulties. But I think the truth lies somewhere in between. One thing is very clear. American agriculture is
largely subsidized, is what I heard.
Largely subsidized. It's heavily technology-based, and these are large farms, and they are highly automated, and they produce at industry level. Mm-hmm. What we produce here is handicraft level, because here the farm holdings are small. So what we do here is basic, it's a subsistence level. Here, farmers produce for their own livelihood. They are not producing it as a business. Only what they can, set aside a surplus, they go and sell. This I'm talking of a whole lot of small farmers. There are rich farmers here also, but far and few. Largely, farm holdings are very small. Even with the rich farmers, the farm holdings are not as big, as large as you would find in, US, where you will find acres and acres of rolling fields. So the thing here is, there is a certain scale which US, with the help of technology, with lesser manpower, here it is very highly, there are two things here, highly manpower intensive and also vagaries of weather. We very much, the monsoon here
tropical
depends on,
climate here.
based on the kind of weather we have. So there is a certain, disparity here. But what the government perhaps is trying to say is, look, whichever critical areas are there, there we won't allow any. But then where we have surplus and maybe cash crops, things like horticulture, things like, winery or other sectors, maybe we'll try to create an advantage there and export them. Well, when we spoke about agriculture, the second major area which India needs to really buck up is manufacturing. For a long time, we wanted the share of manufacturing overall GDP to be around 25%, but has never crossed 15. It's hovering around 13, 14. It's a very difficult situation. But with the opening up, they are going to face a lot of pressure because MSMEs especially have been complaining they don't have access to finance, cheap finance and adequate finance without collaterals. They have been facing a lot of problems. But the hope is now, with EU also opening up, we should be able to get adequate and good technology from them, able to get better capital goods from them, and able to manufacture things better, because now we also will have to compete with China, which has become the factory of the world. And many of Indian white goods, I'm told, is actually Chinese in nature. If you really closely look at it, we just rebrand it. Mm-hmm. So Indian manufacturing is going to face a major challenge. That's a given. So other than agriculture, this is another big area which should buck up.
I also want to talk about the pain point, the controversial bit here, which is the Russian oil. Trump has said that US will be closely monitoring India's Russian oil imports and so on. In fact, this interim trade deal will turn out to be the full the complete BTA between India and US. Only if India will be sticking to these kinds of rules and regulations that Trump has put forth, right? So you think India is in a way selling its sovereignty for some trade deal? Is it how it should be perceived?
See, the thing is how we look at it. There are two ways we can look at this issue. One is through the lens of purity, and the other is pragmatism, as the word they use. Now, purists would say, look, India in the past have given leadership to third world. It has actually stood as a rock behind underdeveloped countries, and with its strong presence because of its population and size, India could assert its moral authority over the world, and it didn't have great weapons. It is a military power, but not such a military power when it comes to Europe or a US. But the moral power was so big that we could command a certain order in the world, and that's why you heard lots of third world leadership coming to India. But then things have changed now. What is the word being used now? Pragmatism. So you have to be pragmatic. The other spin which is also there, I mean, if you may want to call it spin, it's an interesting phrase, is we have to make a distinction between strategic autonomy and strategic hedging. Okay. So should we hedge our bets because we are facing a situation? So the possibility here is, since Indian government faced a certain crisis, you mentioned about the fiscal numbers being good, but beyond that, like I said, external sector was proving to be a huge problem, and then the manufacturing wasn't picking up. So the whole ambition of also becoming
AI, right? I think that
artificial intelligence,
automating and the whole, every single task.
Exactly, and also this ambition of becoming a developed nation. See. The ambition of people have also gone up. They want to see more and more growth and more progress. They want to see development. They want to feel good. See, the stock markets are flat for last nearly one year because they're not feeling good. People are not feeling like going out and investing. Yeah. So nothing was picking up. So the overall sentiments were low. All this because that something was required to pick it up. So I think the government sensed that, and it also knows that if middle class and others go constantly on this thing, then it may be politically a difficult situation after a few years. So I think therefore they took a calculated decision. But the opposition, on the other hand, will have to do its job. the shoe is on the other side. The same BJP government during the economic reforms had a different voice. That time the Swadeshi Jagran Manch was far more aggressive. Today the Manch has more or less agreed to what this government is saying. So I think opposition is doing its job. They should oppose. They should, point out. That's what the beauty of democracy is. If everybody accepted with everything, then where will the fallacies which would come? So you can say at some level, are they opposing for the sake of opposition? Are they opposing also meaningfully? I think when they oppose, then the government also have to critically examine decisions taken by them. So in a way, I think it helps. It also helps Indian government to negotiate better with Trump. The Indian government could always go back and say, look, we are a democracy. It's not easy to make such changes. All that you are asking, I cannot agree to it because then I'll have a political backlash. So democracy has its place. The opposition has its place. And that's what we must recognize.
One last question there. So, among the mother of all deals and the daddy of all deals, which one do you think is the best negotiated deal?
Well, in both cases, more than negotiation, I think we are in a crisis and we had to take a decision. I think politically a broad decision had to be taken. Before, if there wasn't Trump, even Europe wouldn't have agreed for such a deal with India, because they were also pushed to a corner. They also asked for a deal. They also wanted a deal. I think that's what has happened. Therefore, these countries, India and which is almost a continent size, and entire Europe has come together. And same with India, pushed by Trump, went and we did these changes. So these are the two things. The other thing you mentioned about the Russian oil, I think that was your the other question. See, again, why did we start buying the Russian oil? We started buying Russian oil, basically, it's a phenomena which happened during COVID time, post-COVID. So we started buying because it was available cheap, and Europe was also buying.
Elected to the Europe.
Yeah, even Europe was buying.
It was an idea that's been put out by United States by the administration.
Exactly. So even Europe was buying it, and Europe still buys energy from them, but not fuel. So crude oil. So we started importing, but now I think the crude oil prices, other market, and the crude oil prices from Russia, the difference is almost gone now. There's very little difference. That's what I'm being told. So I think India would only buy if it makes sense business-wise. It's not going to buy because of... So they had to look at it. So I mean, there's an interesting piece. Somebody said that, look, for a $2 or $1 difference in crude oil, will you, let go or an opportunity which may open up a $30 billion possibilities for you? So the thing is, here it's basically a political decision which had to be taken. And also, as far as sovereignty is concerned, it is expected, because Trump also is pushing Russia and Ukraine to end the war, because he wants a deal with Russia also. He wants to sell wares to Russia also. He wants to have another tie-up, because he's a businessman. The way he thinks is that. So it is expected, say, if it really comes out true, by June, July, the war kind of comes to an end, then America will rush to, post-war, building up. It would like to spend money. So the thing here is, if that happens, then nobody is going to, allow us to buy the Russian oil. So we have to wait and see. But the larger question is, the decision which is being taken, you can look at this from both sides of the prism, and I have presented both to you.
Thank you very much. It's very insightful talking to you.
Thank you.